Hello, hello. Come right in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to another segment of Current events now. If you would, before we get started, I'd like to ask you to hit the like button. Certainly, we got some good information we want to give you today, and we would ask you to subscribe. We are a very informative channel. We bring information to you. It's information you can use. Certainly, it's information you may or may not know, so you'll be the smarter for coming in. Today, we want to talk about and talk on the subject mental health. How is your mental health? How is your mental health? You know, we went through a pandemic, the first time in my life I've ever went through something such as a pandemic, and I think it changed all of our way of thinking. It changed the way that we look at stuff. And so I think we take life more serious, those of us who lost loved ones. We're still mourning the loss of loved ones. But we came out on the better for it. Even though some of the things we didn't go along with, such as that some people didn't want the shot, some people didn't like the distancing, didn't like washing your hands, didn't like putting on the mask, whatever it was, you know, this really had profound across the board. It had profound precautions, reactions for all of us, whether we were young, whether we were middle-aged, or whether we were old. We all had a toll for mental health. And I hope that more and more doctors, more places of work, more places of worship will talk on the subject mental health, because there's a lot of people out here who, in my opinion, still need help. They still have not bounced back completely with their mental health. And that can take a toll on a person. Look at the children, how their learning was interrupted greatly. Yeah, they were learning online, but there's nothing like learning in front of the teacher. It's nothing like being able to ask your questions, you know. But I wrote a book during that pandemic called How's Your Mental Health in the Midst of a Pandemic? How's your mental health in the midst of a pandemic? And I just wanted to just touch upon a couple of things that I wrote during that time of the pandemic. And the very first question, the very first chapter talks about how is your mental health. And a lot of people sometimes when they think about that, they say, well, you know what, I really didn't give it any thought. But now that I think about it, it changed my view on life and how we should not take it for granted. It changed my view on my health, the safety and the security of my mind, the ability to process anger, stress. Because when you're cooped up, think about it, we were cooped up in the house for over 2 years. And certainly that had to have caused some type of anguish, some type of stress, some type of just a feeling of loneliness and a feeling of being being put within a cage, so to speak. So what I want to do right now is just kind of go over a few of the chapters, not many. And during that time, one of the chapters talks about the effects of mental health on adults, on the old. And yes, it even had effects on them. A lot of times as our grandmothers and parents, we were not able to see them for long periods of time. That had an effect on them. You know, they love to kiss on their grandbabies. They love to spoil them and then send them back home. That's one of the beauties of being a grandparent, is once you're done spoiling them, you just get out of here. Go back home to your parents. You know. So there's a chapter in here on the mental health for adults. Then there's a chapter that talks about coming through a pandemic. And for most of us, if not all of us, I think it's the first pandemic we've ever lived through in history. And so it talks about how we made it through. I would encourage you, if you would get this book, to read that chapter. Coming out of the pandemic with caution. I can remember when we first started coming out of the pandemic, we were starting to go back to church, starting to feel free to visit and so forth. We still were practicing some of the mask things, sometimes a little bit of the distancing, but we were glad that we were seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, in that this thing was coming to an ahead. It was coming to an end, and so coming through a pandemic with caution. I would tell you in this book, there's a chapter that I highly recommend you read. It's called Relaxation and Restriction of So Many States Have Relaxed Their Restrictions. Peoples were very happy when the restrictions from state to state were lifted, where you could go visit people, you could go back to church, you could stop wearing your mask, you didn't have to distance, and so forth and so forth. And just that, it was a psychological thing on our minds, on our heads, that we had to do all of that. You know, we could not touch, we could not kiss, you know, unless you just wanted to do it at your risk. And I talk about in one chapter mixed feelings about the pandemic. And believe me when I tell you, peoples of all persuasions, whether you're religious or you're unreligious, whether you're black or white, didn't make no difference. Everybody had an opinion on this pandemic. Everybody had an opinion on this COVID. You know, some people believed it was nothing. It was much to do about nothing. Some people knew that we were seeing people were dying left and right, even our loved ones. Within my family, I had passed, and people that I knew, some passed and some had it, and was not the same. Some of them couldn't eat. They said they lost their eating. One of my friends said they lost their eating, the ability to taste stuff, and so this COVID really had some. We're still finding out some of the things that this COVID may have changed, may have done to our thought pattern, our mind pattern, our taste buds, so forth and so forth. And so we talk about mixed feelings about the pandemic. We talk about mental health among parents and children. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to parents who said, this pandemic has really tested my nerves. It's really tested my ability to love my child and to have to spend as much. She says, I didn't know that the school took up so much of the kids' time. But being at home with the kids like that, you know, it really was trying that parent's nerve. So that was something that people had to deal with. So there's a chapter on that in here, mental health among parents of children. Eating right during the pandemic. Did you eat right during the pandemic? Certainly I tried to. I seen that I was putting on some weight, so I said, let me see what I can do as to how I can lose weight. So I started doing things, exercising, running, anything I could in the house. I would turn on the TV or YouTube and watch people that were doing exercises, and I would do the exercises with them just to get some of that weight off. So during that time, a lot of us probably put on some pounds, being cooped up inside